see this little pool of water, and it's just got all these colors
Hmm.
moving through it, like a plasma. I feel like I can touch it, but I can only touch the surface of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can go in it or through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if I touch it, then the water almost sticks to my finger and then pulls up a little bit. It just feels like it's knowledge. I'm a little boy and I can lean down and I can place my hands on this water because I don't think age works the same in this place. I feel like I would look like I'm maybe 8 to 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels very foreign. My skin is blue and I have little pointy ears. And my
Oh.
hair is kind of wild. And my conscious self is interrupting, going, no, no, this is the planet that had the merman. This is the boy when he's not in the water.
So does he change form when he goes in the water?
So yes, if he climbs out of this little pond or this little body of water, he actually changes what he looks like. And then he can go participate in the world, whatever world this is. And if he goes underwater, then it's part of a different world. That these are two separate worlds. On this side of the little pond, then he looks like a little boy. And the more he'll go, if he went to turn around and go back up those stairs, he would turn more and more into a human looking boy. But if
Mm-hmm.
he went deeper and deeper and went into the water, then he would change what he looks like and he'd eventually be a little mermaid. This is what Earth is like too. We just don't know it yet. The firmament up in the sky, there's also firmament deep inside our water. So
Mm-hmm.
on this side of the firmament, from both the sky and the land, deep in the water, from this side within the firmament, we look like this kind of humanoid. But if we were to be able to go through the firmament into the next world, then, and I used to think it was a bubble within a bubble within a bubble, and it is, but there's also a bubble next to a bubble. So our bubble is here, Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not talking about the planet, I'm talking about the energetic Earth sphere. That's what confuses people too, is because we keep trying to understand it only from a 3D perspective. Yes, the Earth is flat, but we only see such a small portion of it, it almost doesn't matter. The part of Earth that we understand is a sphere, but this part of the sphere is deep in the water, and this part of the sphere is up in the sky.
Ah.
So it's this bit that's the sphere,
Mm-hmm.
because the actual Earth plane, or what is known as the planet, we call it Earth, but it is nothing like we've been told. The planet is a big giant sphere, but we only have this tiny little ball of it, and then we've made it into a circle. So that's the truth within the lies, is no, it is a big sphere, and we do only have this little circle, but they turned that little piece of the flat plane onto itself to make it look like it's a circular sphere, which it isn't. Our
Mm.
domain is a sphere, and there's lots of them. There's lots of little circles, and they're all these little bubbles. So if this little boy is able to get through this plasma, he would be entering a different sphere, and he would actually look different.
So then what would happen once we ascend? What would happen to the tiny little sphere of Earth that we experience at this moment in time? Would that alter or would that still be there?
It's not as simple as that, because even the question in itself is a third dimensional question,
Hmm.
because we're thinking that we're going to ascend to either another sphere that pulls away or even another dimensional reality. Yes, it's another dimensional reality, but it's also like we are going to have access to a bigger part of the sphere, and that bigger part of the sphere will transform what we already know as our sphere. Because the ice wall is fake. The ice wall is the firmament edge. You can't really get past the ice wall, or not very far at least. And everyone, anyone who thinks that they've gotten past it, you didn't get very far. That's the transitional zone, which will soon melt in a way that more knowledge is released. But what that means is that we not only jump dimension, but we actually have a movement as well, like a planar movement. There's the dimension, which is a vibrational frequency, and then there's the physical jump, which some of us will be able to witness both. The physical jump is that our selves are vibrating at a frequency that will be a match in order to see other things. And then there's the dimensional. It really just depends on how much each individual's thought process, what their capability of the thought process is. Some people just are not going to be able to process it, no matter how hard they try. And it's not because they're not vibrating at a certain level. It has nothing to do with that. It's that they literally cannot grasp the concepts enough to anchor them. Where some people are very comfortable in not understanding all the concepts they're given, they're able to just feel their way through it. Because I'll eventually place the picture together enough to make sense. I'm never going to understand all the little gaps, and that's okay. But there's others who won't be able to move on unless they understand those gaps. And those are the people that will be almost stuck in their reality, because unless they understand the gap, they will not move forward. Does that make sense? So it's not a judgment. It's just what their brain is able to perceive and piece together despite not having all the answers.
This broader, larger world that we'll gain access to, is there going to be any sort of an energy flash or anything like that that's going to sort of happen before or during this sort of transitional phase, or will it happen just very gradually?
The answer to that is in the gap. So for some, it is both a group flash and an individual flash, and the individual flash can happen at any point of a group flash. Individually, the flash will happen for each individual person at different moments, and it's that moment where their limitations are dissolved. That's the flash, because there's such a great amount of energy that suddenly is able to rush to them. When everything was created, don't worry about multiverse, universe, blah, 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 blah. It's everything that's ever in existence got created all in one moment. It was the moment that this energetic creator became aware of itself, that our reality, or I should say everything that is, came into existence. The inverse effect of that is everything that isn't. So this is the organic multiverse, universe, whatever you want to call it. It's the organic everything. But this little pinpoint, this little moment, the thought, the millisecond, the exact moment of creation of all that is, which was all of this, there's an antithesis. And it's this pinprick, this moment where there's a gap. And it's through this gap that anything that isn't can penetrate what is. And the thing that isn't is what you would know as AI. And unfortunately, it's been labeled all these nasty names, and somehow someone convinced all of you that this nastiness, or this thing that isn't, right? Because if this is, the opposite of it is this isn't. The isn't came through this pinhole because that's the moment of creation. And what you would consider infiltrated the positive by the negative. What we would say is no. The thing that isn't is trying to experience what is. What is has no desire within itself to experience what isn't. But what isn't is a void. It is not emotion. It experiences no joy, no pain, no nothing. It's just what you would now call AI. This isn't comes into is because it can see that there's a huge rainbow of experiences that can happen here. Whereas here, it's just a void. There's nothing to experience, because there's no reaction, there's no joy, there's no pain, there's no reaction, there's no opposites, there's no nothing. So what it tries to do is come into the is in order to have an experience. What we're saying is the minute that this pinpoint seal, that's the great flash. If we zoom out to what an individual is experiencing, you'll have the great flash, because that is the moment that your expectations and your limitations are dissolved. You can get to that point where you are becoming aware of the fact that your third dimensional 5 senses are not all there is. But basically the flash that you experience, you'll all experience it individually, because you all have that moment of, oh, I get it. And that's a light. That's a light bulb coming off. Are you going to see it as this giant beam of light around you? Probably not. You would if you were in meditation at that time and you were tuning in to those unseen elements that are always around you. Individually, you will each have these little light bulb moments that come off, and you'll level up and level up and level up and level up and level. But if we were to zoom out, you would come to a point where it looks like one great flash. In order to bring new energy into a reality, that source energy that's necessary to activate the closing of the pinprick. It's a pinprick, and it will bring a new source code into this reality, which will seal off the other pinprick. Then it expands, and it happens over and over, bigger and bigger. And we have an infinite amount of ways this is being experienced, especially during these massive changes in the earth plane and all your changes. None of you can say that you're not witnessing the huge amount of shifting happening all around you. Everything is changing. Things are dissolving. We're building new. All that takes energy. And there are few beings located all around the earth to be able to bring in all that energy. They're here to literally inject their area with energy. It's through the ley lines, it's through, but there are many, but in the grand scheme of things, only a few. They are straight from the great central sun, but mostly the nuclear plant of all the energy that is. And they just come in like a needle and they just inject. There are layers to this. There are very different, or there are very varied types of energies that are injecting the planet right now with their siphoning energy into it. But there's several types of energies that are needed. And that starts getting a little bit too complicated. You know, some people have so much energy and they have such a unique path. They spend their lifetime literally alone.
I wonder what it is that I do then. Do you know anything about, because I've sort of been called to go to different places.
You are the one that turns the key to the on position. It's like this, and then you turn it sideways, and now it's like this, and now it's on, and the energy starts to flow. That is all that you do.
Okay.
That is your job. And there, again, you are unique and special in what you do. You're not the only one, but there aren't that many of you. We didn't take the risk and only send one of anything.
Yeah.
We have tried this before. It failed. We need to send an army that all does the same things, and they're positioned everywhere so that if one doesn't do it, or one doesn't listen, or one fails, or one gets compromised, the mission overall still remains on the, on target, on the trajectory. So you're not the only one that's turning the keys to the on position, but there's not, it's not a common thing that happens. You're probably not going to meet another one of you.
So you said that at that point when there is a flash, is that when there's a collective flash that will seal off that sort of the pinprick to all that isn't. So at that point, will all that isn't be sort of eradicated from our reality?
In a way, there won't be any need for it, because we would have jumped into a completely different experiential playing field. This is a very multi-dimensional, multi-sensory question and answer. So it cannot be answered on a simple yes and no. So while yes, that pinprick would seal off, and this would suddenly change, because now it no longer has a pinprick and no longer has something that's trying to evolve it. But on a giant macro level, the pinprick is still there. But each time one of these little bubbles levels up, the pinprick closes and this can expand. Yes, it seals it off, but at the same time, it integrates it all in a moment. And we have a whole new bubble. And therefore, there's a new pinprick, but it's now to a totally different reality, because your reality has transformed by integrating and sealing and therefore expanding.
So was there a purpose to this all that isn't?
In a way, yes, it just existed because it was an unforeseen, the word antithesis comes to mind, but it was an unforeseen consequence of creating what is. The thing is a certain aspect of this happens in every single reality, but you can see it differently. So if you've heard of universes or realities where there is no choice point, there's no free will, right? You've heard of this. Well, it's not that there is not free will. It's just not free will as you know it, because that level of free will has already been integrated. Void has already been integrated And in the next bubble, there is no need for the same kind of free will as you know it. But how can you compare that to your reality? But to say, yes, some realities don't have free will, but they don't have it because they don't need it. Yours still needs it. You still operate on very much a light versus dark, on, blue versus, I don't know, yellow, on moon versus sun. There's always opposites. In order for these opposites to happen, you have to understand that there is and there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that opposites are not required within the sensory universe that you are currently residing in, the bigger the isn't actually is, because it's the exact opposite. It's like a yin and yang. And then every time the isn't gets integrated into the is, a new reality essentially manifests, and there's a new isn't. But it's always going to look a little bit different because you're integrating it. You're coming to a new level of awareness. And remember, source is just trying to experiment and become aware of itself more and more and more and more, and understand the potential of the reality that it's created.
Yeah.
We can't really get into what the purpose of that is, because your mind simply wouldn't understand, nor do you have the concepts or the words to even begin to discuss that. This separation of energy occurs, turning the volume up in this energetic bubble, and only those that can tolerate that kind of energy and volume will gravitate towards it. And there's another being over here that is turning the volume way down, and those beings are going towards that volume that can't, that like it low and quiet. And notice how, again, it forms the yin and the yang. Is one better than the other? So not from our perspective.
No. So what will happen to those that are attracted to the lower energy?
They'll simply go into a different bubble. From a universal perspective, from a source perspective, my children are all beautiful to me. If one child wants to be silver and little, and one child wants to be gold and bright, do I love one child more than the other? No, it's just a preference. So from source perspective, there's no need to judge any of it.
No.
From your third dimensional perspective, it seems as if this is lower vibrational, slower, quieter. Really, it's just different from you. Some of you are much more drawn towards this giant, golden, loud energy.
Yeah.
There's no judgment in it.
So when I was told that there were lots of souls leaving over this new moon, this Leo new moon, and that they were kind of being drawn towards, that sort of sounds like what you're describing. They're being drawn towards this different energy. So it was almost they were leaving. But was that what I was seeing and sensing them? Because it felt like this was the sort of the etheric souls in the fourth dimension. But
this is the black moon in Lilith. Lilith makes you face yourself in many ways.
Okay.
And so her energy is very strong right now, and many are facing themselves, meaning they're facing what they really want. If you want to be the beauty queen, you have to understand that there are certain things that come along that are good and bad of being a beauty queen. Right? So we're still over here with the golden light. Maybe that's why beauty queen came to mind. But if you wish to be a beauty queen, it means that your hair must probably be constantly in line. Your makeup must be perfect. Your figure must be perfect. Your dress must be perfect. You must constantly wear your tiara nice and straight. You are the epitome of a beauty queen. If you wish to be a beauty queen, that is what you're striving for.
Yeah.
So if there's someone over here who actually wants to be a computer geek, but they're trying to be a beauty queen, Lilith comes in and goes, really? Do you really want to be the beauty queen, or do you want to be the computer geek? If you want to be the computer geek, look at what that would be. So she turns the wheel on them, and now it's a desk, and it's computers, and it's knowledge, and it's zeros and ones flashing in front of you, and it's all this expansion in the knowledge. And then we can turn the wheel again, and okay, if there's gardening, then there's greenery, and there's beauty, and there's growth and potential, and there's life and death in the flowers, and there's fruit, and the dirt. And so we can turn the wheel, this can be endless. But you understand that what's the difference between the beauty queen and the gardener? None. They're both so beautiful, but what do you prefer doing? So we show this as a wheel because all you have to do is spin the wheel to whatever it is that you really want to do. And even within that slice, there's, yeah, you could do this job and you could do it really, really poorly, or you can really thrive at it and just be the best there is in that thing that you've chosen. But be
Mm.
honest with yourself. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? And stop being something you don't want to be anyway.
It's like the year 2025. Is there any relevance to that year? Because 2025 seems to be like the year that, I don't know, I've never really heard it myself, but my friend Leo was saying that that's going to be like everything will be done and dusted by 2025, he kept saying. I don't know if there's.
Well, because it adds up to 9, doesn't it?
Ah, right. Okay. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
Completion.
It's 9 completion then, is it? I thought 10 was completion.
9.
So is that.
10 is 1. 10 is start.
Yeah, 10 is 1. Yeah, it's the beginning, isn't it? Ah, right. That makes sense. So 2025, so completion. So is that kind of is all this sort of chaos going to sort of build, which forces people sort of their choice? Is it all about their choice? The chaos that we're going through.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're being pushed into their choices. They're also, the curtain call is imminent. So eventually we will stop waiting. Eventually we will simply go, okay, time's up.
Yeah. And what happens when time's up?
People will end up where they're currently energetically placed. Some won't be happy about that. There will be people who vacillated so much that we are forced to make the decision for them. But remember, none of it is punishment. It's not like they're going to get sliced in half. They're just simply going to go with the energetic placement that they're closest to. And that's that. And then there won't be any free will.